A continuación, un documental revelador de grandes verdades y grandes mentiras luego del 11 de septiembre. Protocolos de Sion, en Cinemax. El siguiente es un programa apto para adolescentes y adultos.
Jews. Here's my point. During the time of the World Trade Center, you've seen every funeral be covered for everybody. You've not seen one Jewish funeral covered on the media because no Jews died in the World Trade Center.
You mean to tell me, that every single Jew in the World Trade Center knew about it beforehand, and not one of them would have said anything? Because you were saying two things.
Saying that we're saying they didn't go to work. They didn't go to work. That's a fact.
It was hard to believe that here in New York City, people were talking about this tragedy at Ground Zero and repeating the same story over and over about the Jews and 9/11. One night I was in a cab with a young Egyptian driver, and he said the same thing. The Jews were warned, no Jews died. I said, wait a second. He seemed like a bright young guy. You don't believe this stuff, do you? And he turned around and he said, it's all written. It's all in a book. It was written 100 years ago. Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Protocol number 11. God has given us his chosen people the power to scatter, and what to all appears to be our weakness has proved to be our strength, and has now brought us to the threshold of universal rule. It is clear, therefore, that nature herself intended us to rule and guide the world.
Down here, I want to show you. My father has urbanized his suburban paradise. Very unusual for the Maplewood suburban look.
The cops came here and said, why didn't you call us? We would have caught the guy. And I said, you're a little late. He left. It was my grandson. And the cop couldn't quite figure that out. I said, well, he's a New York kid. And
I started my filmmaking career when I was a teenager in suburban Jersey, following in my father's footsteps. And when I grew up, I didn't really know any anti-Semitism. Yeah, there was a country club or two that we couldn't get into, but that was no big deal. Now, for my parents who came of age in the 30s, it was a whole other world, which is why I wanted my father to be part of this journey.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to go up to the attic and find where I think I have hidden the secret archives. I grew up thinking of myself as an all-American kid. I didn't really think much about the world until I was 13 and John F. Kennedy was assassinated. From the moment it occurred, I became consumed with trying to find out what really happened and whether there was a conspiracy. Got it. Found it. Here is the Life magazine. I collected every newspaper and magazine article that came out in the days following the Kennedy assassination. Here is my penthouse. Lee Harvey Oswald was innocent. A combination of my two main obsessions. It was only 10 weeks after the Kennedy assassination that I was bar mitzvahed. I have to admit, I didn't really think much about what it meant to be a Jewish American. And I certainly didn't think about being initiated in the secret Jewish world conspiracy. Years later, when I finally read the protocols, I thought it was a joke. It was like a comic book. I couldn't believe people took it seriously. Now it's available on CDs and audio tapes.
By recording it on cassette tape, we make it available for private and public use. What you're about to hear is the most diabolical plot ever uncovered. Protocol number 1. It must be remembered that people with base instincts are more numerous than those with noble ones. Therefore, the best results in governing are achieved through violence and intimidation.
I want to know if anyone has ever heard of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. You never heard of it?
Some have called it the mother of all conspiracy theories. It claims to be the minutes of a secret meeting of Jews at the end of the 19th century who were plotting to take over the world.
Do you have that book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion? Sold out? He sold out the Protocols.
Yeah.
It's a hot seller.
Why do you think it's such a hot seller?
People buying that crazy.
You could even buy it at Walmart. Why had the Protocols reemerged since 9/11?
If you actually buy into this conspiracy theory, all roads lead to the Elders of Zion. It's a book that was written in the late 1800s in Russia. It's a book that's been debunked half a dozen times, going back to 1921 by the Times of London, no less. But it's a lie that won't die.
The Protocols of Zion was probably fabricated sometime at the end of the 19th century by agents of the Russian Tsar's secret police. It was distributed around 1905 at the same time as a wave of pogroms against the Jews. When the Tsar was overthrown in 1917, the Communist Revolution was portrayed as the first step in the Protocols' plan of world conquest. In 1920, Henry Ford published them in the United States. If you bought a new Ford, you could also get a free copy. A few years later, Hitler incorporated them into Nazi ideology.
This is your updated protocols, right? You got here, and then you've got the Jewish mafias running America. That's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. In case you don't get it, you can then click into the original in any one of 6 languages. And in the era that we live in, you have tragically people across the Middle East, whether it's through miniseries they view or an op-ed piece that they'll read, who actually look at the Protocols as a history book.
كما أن الإنسان يعلو الهيمنة كذلك اليهود هم أرفع من شعوب الأرض لأن نطفة الغرباء كنطفة الحمار المسيح المخلص عيسى لن يأتي ما لم تنقرض الشعوب غير اليهودية وتصبح السلطة من نصيب اليهودي.
Most of the stuff to the average person sounds nuts. We're all sort of, laugh at it. But the problem is no longer the lunatic fringe. The problem is a guy like Mahathir, probably the most successful, quote-unquote, moderate Muslim leader in the last quarter of a century. His speech essentially was a ripoff of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
The Europeans killed 6 million Jews out of 12 million. But today the Jews rule this world by proxy. They get others to fight and die for them. They invented socialism, communism, human rights, and democracy so that persecuting them would appear to be wrong, so they may enjoy equal rights with others. With these, they have now gained control of the most powerful countries, and they, this tiny community, have become a world power.
Mahathir, who for the first time in 60 years raises the level of anti-Semitism, here is a head of state believing that the door is wide open, that he can stand up in front of the international community and say what Hitler said.
The characterization of Jews in the Nazi era was subhuman, vermin, the pollutants of the pure Aryan race. Now, if you read this book, and this is my first reaction when I read this, was, wait a second. This isn't a book about vermin. This isn't a book about subhumans. This is a book about superhumans.
I never met a Jew myself.
You never met a Jew?
I never met a Jew, and I never met a Jew that said he knew what Judaism is.
Somebody in Nazi Germany thought they were real Jews, didn't they?
Well, I think somebody in America said that there was such a thing as a Holocaust. I have no evidence of that either, that there were 6 million Jews.
Are you saying that you dispute that there were even concentration camps where Jews and Gypsies and dissidents and communists were exterminated? Right. Are you saying those didn't exist and blacks, if they were there, would have been exterminated?